if this is a matter of drawing her sword, this humble one will consider it," said the woman. "Conversely, if this is a matter of opening her purse, this humble one refuses, for you have yet to return the 3 silvers I lent you last time." "Is that so?" said Tianlangjun. "It's only 3 silvers. All right, if you lend me 3 more, you can purchase me for 3 days." The woman flatly refused. "Your distinguished self doesn't look strong enough to carry any burdens. Rather, he looks like someone who has never toiled, who can't distinguish wheat from rice. What's the point of buying you?" Zhúzhīcí watched this for a long time, then said frankly, "My lord, I fear that this one is disparaging you from being too expensive." Tianlangjun was indeed being disparaged. This wasn't new. Sometimes the servants and guards who served him secretly disparaged him too, especially when he was performing his passionate and dramatic recitations. But being told he was worth less than a mere 3 silvers, that was a bit much. "Let's put all that aside for now," said Tianlangjun. "Surely my face can't be worth less than 3 silvers." The woman choked a little, then studied his face for a while and smiled. "True, it's worth that much." Then she tossed him a heavy ingot of gold. From then on, it was as if a dam had broken, and Tianlangjun's expenditures in the human realm burst out like a flood. He became even more unrestrained, even more unfettered, to the point that it was terrifying to watch. He'd found a rich Patreon, a mountain of gold. Whenever Zhúzhīcí pulled out an empty purse with a slightly embarrassed expression, Tianlangjun would happily and thoughtlessly go to the mountain and knock on the gates. Zhúzhīcí couldn't shake the feeling that something about this was wrong, that something was backward. Why was Zhúzhīcí acting like one of those wealthy young masters in plays with their distinguished statuses and heaps of money? Why was Tianlangjun acting like one of those pampered young ladies who had run away from home and was ignorant of the world? And why was Zhúzhīcí acting like a prudent servant girl accompanying that lady, running errands and doing odd jobs? Zhúzhīcí had attempted to alert his lord to this reversal of roles, to tell him that he needed to retrieve his dignity as the highest ruler of the demon realm. But Tianlangjun seemed to find pleasure in this sugar daddy, sugar baby relationship. The blind passion that he had in the past directed to the entire human race was now poured entirely upon a single person. Zhúzhīcí was truly a cold and ruthless, yet wholly extraordinary person. When they met up, she took them to see various rare and wonderful things, and to all manner of interesting and intriguing places. Forbidden codices Zhúzhīcí couldn't find no matter how he tried. A wondrous spirit mushroom within a certain hidden cave, a dew lake with waters that shone like crystal, an obscure yet marvelously skilled pipa-playing prostitute. When they weren't together, they'd see no trace of her for 10 or 15 days and would be unable to find her no matter how they tried. She never batted an eyelid, nor expressed a hint of infatuation, nor spoke of pining. She had her own plots and calculations, and she looked coldly on from the sidelines. Because half his blood came from the serpent race, Zhúzhīcí possessed a kind of natural animal instinct. He faintly sensed that this person who kept approaching them was an exceedingly dangerous entity. She wasn't like demon women with their enchanting by-the-book charm. Instead, she was solemn and driven, though she gave off the impression of being refined and courteous. Yet it was indeed only the impression of being refined and courteous. Zhúzhīcí dared not assume he would in fact get off easy at her hands if it came to a true, brutal fight. Beneath the refined surface lay arrogance and indifference, along with an ambition that further concealed her scheming. As Huanghua Palace's second-in-command, Su Xian enjoyed a high and lofty status and commanded thousands at every turn. On top of that, the cultivation world that Huanghua Palace led alongside the other major sects had been the demon race's nemesis since ancient times. Su Xiyan was indeed someone incredibly dangerous as far as they were concerned. Zhúzhīcí reported all the information he'd found in full detail, yet Tianlangjun wasn't remotely concerned. Once he became infatuated with something, he disregarded even life and death as he threw all his eggs into that one basket. It wasn't like he didn't know the truth, he just nevertheless never showed any doubt. The price of never doubting her was to be sealed beneath the sunless, skyless darkness of Bailu Mountain for more than 10 years with no chance of return.
I want to kill humans.
During those more than 10 years, that was the line Tianlangjun repeated most often. In the past, he had loved humans more than anything, so he'd never done such things. Without his vast demonic energy to sustain Zhúzhīcí's man-shaped form, Zhúzhīcí once again reverted to his half-snake appearance. Every time Tianlangjun saw him arduously slithering back and forth, he would lash out with a
"Get lost."
Or he'd say,
"Your slithering is far too ugly."
Zhúzhīcí would then silently squirm away and search the outside for a place untouched by the sun and moon. There he would continue to practice his slithering, now rusted from years of disuse. His lord's temper became unimaginably terrible, but Zhúzhīcí couldn't summon even the slightest bit of strength to feel hurt or angry. Tianlangjun's quote, "Get lost," was telling him to get lost to the demon realm, or to get lost to the southern border, or to get lost to his old home, or to get lost to anywhere, so long as he didn't remain in front of Tianlangjun. Tianlangjun couldn't stand for others to see him so wretched and downtrodden, in a state where he could beg for neither life nor death. From the moment of his birth, he'd been the demon race's most respected crown prince. He'd never tasted suffering, had always been composed and elegant, and had rejected all crude and vulgar things that would ruin his reputation. He'd even had some slight misophobia. Covered in blood, he'd been sealed beneath 72 metal chains and 49 potent paper talismans, forced to watch every day as his body slowly rotted and began to stink, all while his mind remained perfectly clear, unable to lose consciousness even if he wished to. That gang from the cultivation world had lacked the ability to kill him outright, so they thought up of every possible method to torment him instead. Even Zhúzhīcí's ugly half-snake form looked slightly better than Tianlangjun did in this state. Having reverted to his old form, Zhúzhīcí was unable to speak, so Tianlangjun began talking to himself. For almost half the hours in every day, he would recite the songs and dialogues from those plays. Sometimes, as Tianlangjun was singing, he would abruptly cease as if his throat had been slit. Zhúzhīcí would then know that it must have been a play Su Xiyan had taken them to watch. But after pausing for a time, Tianlangjun would start again just as abruptly, continuing in a louder voice. Between his hoarse throat and the deserted valley, the lingering melodies drifted, long and drawn out and heart-rending. Zhúzhīcí was unable to speak. He couldn't tell him to, quote, "stop singing." He couldn't raise his arms, couldn't cover his ears, couldn't prevent himself from hearing the notes. More and more, he understood what it meant to be, quote, "utterly powerless." When something makes you sad, when something brings you pain, why continue to force yourself to do it? The only thing he could do was to persistently, day after day, use leaves to carry the Dew Lake's water and bring it drop by drop to clean Tianlangjun's eternally unhealing wounds. In all those years, they never learned of Luo Binghe's existence. Furthermore, Su Shiyan didn't succeed to her position of power as expected. Instead, she silently vanished to somewhere unknown. Even long after they'd once more greeted the sun and sky, they still hadn't learned. Therefore, when Zhuozhi saw that face for the first time at the southern border, he was so shocked he forgot to complete the business he'd been tasked with. After a bout of fighting, he went straight back and reported it to Tianlangjun. Hence, there had been the battle at the Holy Mausoleum. After Shen Qingqiu had been spat out and settled with the proper arrangements, Tianlangjun had stared at Zhuozhi as his nephew single-handedly fanned burning coals with a cattail leaf fan.
Do you think he's like me or like her?
Zhuozhi knew very well who this quote he and quote her referred to. Didn't my lord say it himself? He's like his mother. Tianlangjun shook his head and smiled.
The way they pretend to be callous.
In truth, both of them knew that Luo Binghe's tendency to be attached to and dependent on others, and his utter lack of reservations in his obstinate infatuation, were more like Tianlangjun. Tianlangjun leaned his cheek on one hand as he watched the closed-eyed Shen Qingqiu and sighed.
He's far more fortunate than I am.
The person who Luo Binghe refused to let go of was someone like Shen Qingqiu. That was indeed a fortunate thing. At least Shen Qingqiu wouldn't summon the entire cultivation world to seal Luo Binghe beneath Changqiu Mountain. On top of that, there had only ever been two people in this world who hadn't looked at Zhuozhi ugly appearance with disgust. One was Tianlangjun, and the other was Shen Qingqiu.
How about it?
Asked Tianlangjun.
Do you want to steal that fortune for yourself?
Zhuozhi stared at Tianlangjun for a long time before understanding what he meant. Then he blushed a bright red. My lord.
Steal it,
said Tianlangjun.
We're all demons. Why fuss about something like this? Besides, he's only your younger cousin. What are you afraid of? The last lord of Morbei clan even openly stole their younger brother's official wife.
I don't have any such wishes. Tianlangjun was confused.
Then why is your face red?
Zhuozhi patiently bore with him. My lord, if you hadn't asked me to find all those books, or told me to read them with you, or recited them aloud to force me to review them, this subordinate's face definitely wouldn't have turned red. Because of this exchange, some strange things echoed in his ears from time to time, which made him unable to look at immortal Master Shen with a clear conscience. Zhuozhi understood why Tianlangjun habitually teased him this way. Beneath all the ribbing was a desire to probe and provoke. From the day he emerged from beneath Bailu Mountain to the sun and sky, Tianlangjun hadn't planned to use his new body for long, nor had he had any plans regarding the future. But when he saw Shen Qingqiu, Tianlangjun had actually felt a kind of relief. He thought, finally someone to whom I can entrust my foolish nephew. Zhuozhi stupid brain could only revolve around other people. He never thought of himself. If he could find a new person to follow, then even after Tianlangjun got himself killed, he wouldn't end up lost with nowhere to go. Tianlangjun thought that Shen Qingqiu wasn't a bad target to follow, regardless of what kind of, quote, follow it was. Having achieved this mysterious peace of mind, Tianlangjun became increasingly reckless with throwing about his demonic energy. and his body's deterioration and decline hastened day by day to the point that his arms or fingers often fell off. Zhúzhīcí was overwhelmed to the point of exhaustion trying to find means by which to repair him. One time he was trying to use a needle and thread to mend his lord's limbs. Tianlangjun held out his arms for Zhúzhīcí to prick. However, he wished and said, "Your instincts have always been very accurate." Zhúzhīcí gave a confirmation. "Between me and Luo Binghe, who will win and who will lose?" After a long silence, he said languidly, "Even if you don't say it, I'm plainly going to lose." Zhúzhīcí bit off the thread and tied a knot. "After today, how about you follow Peak Lord Shen?" Tianlangjun asked, sincere yet not. He'd already taken care of Luo Binghe. Taking care of you as well shouldn't be too different. "My lord should sleep," said Zhúzhīcí. But Tianlangjun continued to talk nonsense. "Aren't you heading to Immortal Master Shen's tent tonight to help him remove the ties that bind? You were listening when I asked if he and Luo Binghe had dual cultivated before. His reaction made it obvious that they haven't. The early bird catches the worm. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Zhúzhīcí acted like he couldn't hear and bowed down to remove Tianlangjun's shoes. But then Zhúzhīcí's hands went empty. Tianlangjun had cooked his legs so his shoes were firmly upon the beast skin cover. "What must I do to crush your self-esteem?" he asked in all seriousness. "To make you lose heart and give up on me, so that you'll leave." "My lord has read too many scripts and plays," said Zhúzhīcí. "That trope is an old hat. You could never crush this subordinate self-esteem. That's why my lord should sleep." "I don't want to go to sleep so early. Quickly, go to Peak Lord Shen's tent. I'll come to see you two after a bit." "My lord, you're so willful," Zhúzhīcí said helplessly. Pestering others endlessly, full of wild fantasies, forever coming up with these stupid suggestions. "Haven't I been so willful this whole time?" asked Tianlangjun. "So, how about it? Why not consider leaving me?" His lord was acting like a drunk today. The number of things he said that left people unable to laugh or cry had multiplied by 10. Zhúzhīcí shook his head and reached out several more times before he finally caught hold of Tianlangjun's shoes. He yanked them off by force and repeated, "My lord should sleep." Tianlangjun was pushed onto the bed and forcefully covered with a blanket. "You're more and more like a mother," he said. Then he sighed. "Do you think your uncle is only poking fun at you? You don't urge me to stop, nor do you seek a way out for yourself. If you're always like this, Zhúzhīcí, what are you going to do in the future?" "As expected, I can't bring myself to hate humans." Tianlangjun had said this to Shen Qingqiu. When Zhúzhīcí heard these words, he was actually a little happy for his lord. Tianlangjun had finally admitted that his true heart had never changed. Finally, he would no longer need to force himself. Amidst the rolling dust and falling rubble, Tianlangjun sighed and muttered, "Zhúzhīcí, that appearance of yours truly doesn't look good." This time, Zhúzhīcí had no need to complain. Its only thought was that it still had a tiny bit of strength left, enough to hold on for a little longer, so that its lord wouldn't die with it. there was no need for him to worry that dying alongside it would be unsightly. As Michael Ridge transformed into smoke and dust with a thunderous roar, an enormous snake plummeted down toward the heart of the Luo River, which glittered like silver scales. In truth, Shen Qingqiu hadn't finished listening to what Tianlangjun had been saying, for after that first sentence there had been another, quiet, heard only by Zhuozhilang. Tianlangjun had said, "But why is loving a person such a difficult thing?" At the time, Zhuozhilang had been unable to squeeze out a smile, nor had it been able to speak. As if lost in thought, it had flicked out its tongue, spraying Tianlangjun with a face full of snake saliva. "It truly is difficult," it thought, "but no matter how difficult, it's less difficult than making one's heart stop loving."